One thing we don't do enough is to talk with other couples about their relationship. Yes, I get it. Who wants to really air out their dirty laundry? But the reality is, if we don't start talking with other couples about the challenges they're facing and how they're facing them, we're going to think we're the only ones with dirty laundry. This is why I love interviewing individuals and couples about their relationships here on the podcast so you can start to hear more stories that might sound a lot like yours. Today, I'm interviewing Josephine Bonner, and in specific, I want you to pay attention to how she and her partner dealt with both burnout, changing careers, a malignant tumor, all while raising kids. So let me tell you a little more about Josephine. She's a LinkedIn strategist and entrepreneur who helps established coaches grow their audience, attract aligned leads, and build scalable online offers without sacrificing their energy, values, or freedom. Because she's had to build a business online, she really walks her talk, and she teaches her clients how to do the same thing. After a decade in financial services, climbing the ranks at Switzerland's largest bank, her first wake-up call came in 2019, and she shares with us what that was like, realizing it was time for her to leave the corporate world. Just as her business was finally ready to take off in December 2021, she was diagnosed with a malignant tumor. During her healing, everything was called into question. How do I work this way? What do I want to do with my work? Who do I want to serve? But instead of giving up, she rebuilt from the inside out, stronger, clearer, and more committed than ever to doing business differently. You'll also get to hear from her about her husband's burnout and how he started to recognize what his needs and his purpose and greater calling were in his work. So I can't wait for you to learn from Josephine. Go grab yourself a warm drink and let's dive in. Welcome to Relationship Reset, a podcast for high-achieving couples who've been together for over a decade and don't want to feel like roommates anymore. I'm Katie Russler, relationship strategist and couples counselor with almost 20 years of experience helping ambitious couples reconnect, strengthen communication, and turn their relationship into the best part of their success story. This podcast is about using practical tools and a lot of real talk to help you understand your patterns, stop feeling stuck and discouraged, and start working on your relationship in ways that actually fit your busy life. Because your relationship shouldn't be the cost of your success, it should be the best part of it. So let's dive in. Welcome back to the podcast. I find being able to interview different individuals about their relationship so helpful for me to better understand my own relationship. So today I have brought Josephine Bonner, and we're going to be talking about her marriage of 25 years, people, and what has made it successful while both of them are running businesses. So thank you so much for being present today and coming and sharing kind of your nuggets of wisdom and also some of the challenges and struggles you guys have been through.
Oh, thank you so much, Katie, for having me. And I'm so excited to be here. And as you say, it's not always, a dance on roses. There have been some challenges, and I'm an open book. So let's just share it.
Yeah. So let's start with who you are, what you do, and maybe because your husband wasn't able to be present today, share a little bit about him too. So everybody gets sort of the framework of these two alpha people that are coming to the table. He's present, but not.
Exactly. So I'm from Sweden originally, and I came to Switzerland as an exchange student because back then, we didn't have Google and YouTube back then. So I wanted to learn proper German, I thought. Didn't have a clue that Swiss German is so weird. But turns out that I met my then to become husband as an exchange student. And I went back to finish my studies in Sweden. And then the choice was, are we going to move to Sweden or are we going to move here to Switzerland? And because of the ways things were back then, it was so much easier to get a permit if you were married. So it wasn't that, super romantic kind of like wedding, asking, will you marry me and be the love of my life? But my husband had a very kind of sensible approach. He said, you know what? There are people, they are together for 10 years and then they get married and then they divorce within 6 months or 10 months or 12 months. Why don't we do it the other way around? We've been together for almost a year. Let's get married. And I was like, sure, let's do it. So we got married within a year. And now, as you said, we've been married for almost 25 years.
Wow. First of all, I commend him for being like, let's do this differently than what is really typical in this area of Europe, right? Like you're together for 7 to 10 years, then you get married because usually you're like, okay, let's have kids. Oh, we should probably legally be bound together and then have that. But you guys were like, no, after a year, let's do this. What did your family think? Were they like, okay, she's gone crazy. She went off, to Switzerland and now she's getting married?
And I don't think only my family, my friends, everyone thought that I was crazy, that I was doing this. And I don't think I even dared to tell my parents, like in the beginning, that we had actually become, engaged, right? So it was all a little bit hush hush. And what I also did, or what we did, which I would do differently today, was because in Switzerland, you kind of like, even if you marry in the church, you have to marry, how do you say it? Standesamtlich?
Standesamt. So like you have to do the legal paper at the courthouse.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So what we did was we did the legal at the courthouse, and then a year later we did it in the church because that had been one of my dreams for, since I was a little kid. And then we invited all, family and friends, and we had an amazing wedding in Sweden. But when I stood there, I was walking into the church. I was like, why the heck are we even doing this for? So if I could, had turned back time, I would have done the courthouse and had a big party then. We have actually married twice, right? A year and a day apart, because we couldn't pick exactly the same date a year later. So
I love that. So let's fast forward to today. First of all, you have kids. Let's talk about that. But also, what work are you both doing?
Yeah, so it all actually, started to crack a little bit. So both my husband and I, we started working in the financial services industry. We've both been working at KPMG. I then also worked for EY, and I started to work at one of Switzerland's largest banks, now the largest bank because they have merged. And we were both in that industry for 20 years. And then my husband actually had a burnout, right? So he had a burnout in 2018. And that led to him just saying, fudge it, I'm out of here. And he quit his job. And as part of his burnout, I actually started to see a therapist because I didn't know how to deal with this. And the first, I would say, probably 2 to 3 sessions, I sat there talking about him, but then we started moving into talk about me and how I felt and what I did. And through that process, I started listening to what it was that I really said. And turns out that I was comfortable in my role, either at the bank where I was an executive, and I had actually even had a little bit like blackouts twice. But I couldn't take them seriously because my husband was building his business. It hadn't taken off yet. So everything was on my shoulders. And I heard that, the therapist saying, but do you have to stay? Do you have to do it? And I was like, yeah, I have to do it. I have to do it. And what happened through that process was that I almost started to resent my husband because he was living the life that I wanted to live. He told me once, he was like, you know what? I was at home and I was so fed up with everything. And then I just walked, I went for a walk, and I was like, I wanted to go for a walk. I didn't have time, from 8 o'clock in the morning until, 6 o'clock in the evening. I was working, had back-to-back meetings. I couldn't even go to the toilet without coming back to a filled inbox. And then as part of that whole process, I had actually also started a little bit to, personal development, started to breaking out, doing things only for me. I went to a writer's course in Malaga with other amazing people that actually totally broadened my horizon to see that there are things happening outside of the banking world, right?
Mm-hmm.
So small ideas started to form it. So I started to talk about maybe to become an entrepreneur too. I had different friends that I spoke about this idea, and they were all also like, yeah, let's do it. But neither one of us really dared to do it. And then one day I had what I say my very, very, very first wake-up call, like real wake-up call. I got a call from my dad, and he said, now I know what it is. I have pancreatic cancer. Or for me, that was like a lightning from a blue sky. And I Googled it, and it said that he would have 3 more months to live on average. And for me, that was just like, what am I doing? I'm going to a job where I have, stomach ache when I open up the laptop in the morning. I get invited to meetings where I'm yelled at. Yeah, the pay is really good. It looks good on paper. It looks good on the outside. I had a good marriage. I have, as you mentioned, 2 kids. Everything looked very good on the outside. But inside, I was like, am I going to do this until I turn 65? And then maybe I have 5 more years, just like my dad has?
Yeah.
So what I did then was I actually handed in my resignation. I had no clue. I just told my husband, I need to do this. And he said, yeah, do it. We'll work it out somehow. We'll work it out.
Wow.
So I handed in my resignation without a backup plan. I wouldn't advise anyone to do that today, actually. But for me, it was as if I don't do this now, I might never, ever get out. So that was kind of, so he actually paved the way a little bit. He showed how to be brave and actually try to do something outside of the corporate world. And then I took on, the next wave and continued doing it.
That is so powerful. And to have, like you said, like the lightning with the blue sky, that moment of, no, I
Yeah.
can't keep living this way. You're exactly right. You could have made it till 65 in this position and probably hit your own burnouts several times. But as we
Yeah.
all know, if we feel like others around us are burning out or have issues, we just keep digging deeper, thinking we have no time for this. And our health becomes the issue. And then we have issues as soon as we retire. So very like courageous and powerful of you to say. And probably in that moment, like you said, like I wasn't thinking through all of the things, like I just can't anymore. And
Yeah.
that intuitive gut response and leaning in and going, I'm not, no, no more. And your husband to say, I got you.
Well, he could he couldn't really not say it, right? Because I had him for a very long time before. Not only what happened in 2018, but it's always been a little bit like part of our journey that I had been the strong one through ups and downs. He has a more difficult family story than I had, so it was all kind of like, damn it, now it's my time to shine, right?
Yeah, definitely. What are the values that the two of you have that have helped you go through these challenges that you've faced throughout your almost 25 years together?
I think about, I don't know if you would call it a value, but the thing about like not being afraid of change, right?
Yeah.
To dare to try new things. Yes, we have also taken, the easy part, moving from one financial services job to another financial services job. But we have moved from Switzerland to Sweden, back to Switzerland again. Things like that is actually changing how you do things. We recently sold our house, moved back to the city, because change is part of what we're doing and we're embracing those changes. And I also think another value is we stick together kind of. It's like, and support each other. There isn't a moment where one person was, well, except, when I invested in my very, very first business coach, it was a very significant investment. And I wanted his confirmation that I could do this. And he was like, he probably listened to my voice because I wasn't really, really sure myself. So he said, no, absolutely not. And then it took a couple of months and I was still following this business coach. And then I said, I'm doing this. So I just went back to him and said, I'm doing this. And he was like, okay, yeah, go ahead and do it. And I think that is so important to remember. We are individuals. And if I want something, I really need to be grounded in my own decision first. And then I can go and talk to him about it. And then we can have a proper discussion about it. But if I'm not sure about it and he hears that, he thinks he does me a service by saying no, right? Yeah. He thinks he's taking away that decision, the hard decision for me, and helps me to do it, right?
Yes, that is so true. I see that with couples on repeat, where it's like one comes with the idea, but still vague and is seeking the permission and confirmation, and even the cheerleader. And the other partner may be a little more practical or, like you said, can sense the insecurity and is like, ooh, this sounds like it's not going to work out. But the moment you said, no, I'm doing this, he could feel, yeah, she's got this. How is it for the two of you making big decisions for your businesses that can impact your family? Do you guys talk about them first? Or is it kind of we trust each other? And if it's going to really cause some negative impacts, then we have those discussions.
Yeah, I think we kind of do that. And now, actually, both of us are kind of like employees in the same business. It's one business, but we work in different areas, right? And my husband is a consultant and I'm a business coach. So those are kind of like but it goes under the same roof of the same business. So, but I think it's important to remember that kind of like, this is my part and this is his part. And yeah, of course, we talk to each other, especially if it's like significant investments. We do talk about it because it has an impact on kind of like, on the cash flow and things like that. I also think it's important to support each other to say, well, you should go and do that development course or you should go and do that conference or whatever, because you will grow as part of that too.
Yeah. It sounds like because you have your own roles that in a way, you have your own leadership in what you do. How and who who runs the leadership in the house? How do you balance that? Right? Because it's so easy when we're like so used to our say goes, what we want, we lead, we take over. But then when we come together, there's a part of us on both sides, husband and wife, that wants to be more of the receiver and not always the leader. Like, gosh, I'm so tired of making decisions. I'm so tired of having to take over. How do you guys balance that?
So I would say I am the CFO of the business of the family, and he's more like the COO, CTO, and together we are the co-CEO of the business. And the funny thing is that my husband is more of the shopper than I am, right? So we have those what what you would say potentially typical female male. And in our way, it's actually the other way around. And that has then also made me, I don't want to say no all the time. I don't want to say no all the time. So that has sometimes, created some kind of, conflicts and things like that. Mm-hmm. But we have to talk it through. And we do. And then we, meet halfway, right? Excellent. When it comes to the kids. So what happened also, during my husband's burnout, what happened then was that I was then, instead of before we had always split like 50-50, bring into daycare and picking up from daycare. But I was more of the project leader, taking care of excursions when they had sports in school and things like that. And what happened throughout when my husband got his burnout was that he was home. So then he kind of took care of the whole, doing the bringing, picking up sports, excursions and things like that. So I was completely I didn't know what was going on in my kids' calendars any longer. And that, it feels as if you're a little bit like out of the loop, as if you're not really part of the things. It was very nice to just go to work and just come back from work without worrying about, am I going to pick them up on the right time? So it took away a lot of that worry. But at the same time, it also made me feel a little bit like I've lost a part of myself, right? Yeah. Now our kids are way older. They are 13 and 19. So it's not as if that is part of the whole organization any longer. But I think it's also important to remember we do have certain roles, but it's also important to remember that if I don't always want to be the project leader, for example, which I didn't want to be at the time. It's so important to talk about that. How can we mix it up? How can we change it? Is it easy to change it? Absolutely not. It's very hard to change such things.
That's very true. Did you find that your communication got stronger during that phase, or did it have a lot of bumps in the road because of the fact that there was burnout and you were having to be the full breadwinner at that time?
Yeah, both. My husband speaks a lot the whole time. So communication in our family, it's rather I who say, oh, let's not talk about it, hope that it, goes away. And he's talking, right? My youngest son is exactly like him too, talks. And my older son is like me. We talk when we have something to say. And it can be a topic that we thought about or, we experienced 2 weeks ago, and now it pops up into our minds, right? So both, I think if we would have both been like me, or if we would have both been like him, it wouldn't really have matched, because if we would both been like my husband is, then we would have kind of like probably not really listened to each other. And if we would have both been like I am, we wouldn't have spoken at all. So the combination is probably a little bit like the winning concept here in this case.
It's good that your personalities, but also sounds like your temperaments match well, which tends to happen, right? We attract sort of our opposites, or someone who's on that spectrum a little bit further away from us, and then that complements us. But it can also make us clash. I'm sure there's times where he's like, I need to know your thoughts on this. And you're like, I don't really want to talk about it.
Exactly. 100%. Or I am, sometimes when I remember, picking him up from the airport, and I pick him up, and it goes like, he kind of reiterates the whole story from the moment he left me, to now coming back, like minute for minute. And I was like, you have to stop. You have to breathe so that I have, an opportunity to say something here. And he's like, he doesn't think about that. He's thinking, oh, I have to, tell her about everything that has happened, right?
Fill the void. Like, it's silent. We have to keep talking.
Yeah.
Yes. So let's shift into the fact that, when we're entrepreneurs and when we're really business minded, it's hard to turn off that part of our brain, especially when we're maybe sitting at the dinner table or it's just time for the two of you together. How have you guys worked on boundaries around kind of work mind and, hey, it's time for our relationship to be focused on?
So in the beginning, it was also the case that when I was still in corporate, I have a finance background, which my husband has too, but he's not. I'm the accountant and auditor, and he's more kind of like, I don't know, corporate finance. So when he started his business first, and I said, I can do the accounting because that I've done it, right? Turns out that 2 weeks before I was going to do the accounting, which probably took me like maybe 1-2 hours to actually do it, 2 weeks before, 1 week before, during, I was in such a bad mood and and I couldn't really understand what was going on. I just hated doing it until I realized that, well, I don't really want to do this. Why did I even volunteer to do this? Just because you know how to do something doesn't mean that you have to do it, right? And I said, I'm not doing this any longer. So I think that is also part of finding our roles as part of entrepreneurs to say, I like to do this, I don't like to do that, and let's outsource this piece. I don't do the accounting in my own business either. I could do it, but I don't like to do it. So that piece is completely outsourced and it gives so much more energy. And then we really love what it is that we're doing. But sometimes, depending on especially the clients my husband works with, the bigger contracting works, it can be a little bit like challenging situations. And then I might need to bring him back to say, let's focus on the positive things instead, right? So that to not draw down, and focus on the positive. So it's like reminding both of us that this is happening and this is how we're feeling and we need to focus on the good stuff. Mm-hmm. And then our kids say, or especially our oldest one, he says, no business talk at the dinner table. So because they are very much involved too in the whole thing, right?
Yes, I can imagine. I mean, you basically, when you've got two entrepreneurs, your talk, your communication, how you raise your kids is going to be impacted by that. It's a legacy piece to what you guys are doing that your kids will probably think through that lens, whether they want to or not. They're going,
yeah,
hey, that's a good business idea. Oh, how would we make that profitable, right? Like just naturally it's going to come out.
Yeah, exactly. And my youngest son, when I quit my banking job, because here in Switzerland, when they are, I think it's like when they are in seventh grade, they can go and visit their parents at work for a day. And the bank organized cool stuff that they could do. So when I quit my job, he was like, what? You're not going to be a boss at the bank any longer? So now I can't come and visit you at work? So for him, it was a little bit like devastating that I would do something, right? But today, I mean, this is 6 years ago now too. So today, both of them are very proud of what we're doing. And the fun thing that actually happened was that my youngest son and his friend were Googling their parents. And I was the only parent who was very active in the Google feed. And his friend said, what is she doing? And he was like, she's a YouTuber. I wouldn't call myself a YouTuber. But, my son thought that is super cool, right?
Yes. Yes. Oh, I love that they were Googling you guys and going, what is it your mom does? She's a YouTuber. Tell me, what do you and your husband do to build your relationship, even almost 25 years into it?
We do a lot together. We don't do like, go away for a weekend. We could absolutely do that now that the kids are older. But as long as they want to join us, we actually want to go with them, right?
Yeah.
But not so long ago, we took the train down to Milan and we were just there for a night or two. I can't remember. So like little things like that, but we don't do date night or things like that. And we work together from home. So we see each other a lot too. And we have lunch together and yeah.
How do you guys work on making sure you talk about things beyond the practical of what needs to get done in the house or, with the kids older, they can do a lot of their own things, but really check in on like, how are you feeling? How's your stress level? I mean, you're working together at home. You probably see it on each other's faces, but how do you make sure you have that sort of check-in?
You feel the energy in the room too. Right? Sometimes it's palpable, right?
Right.
So it's not only you see it, but we've been together for so long. I think it's like we can read each other. But one thing that really happened, and not so long ago, was that my husband does most of the cooking, and I do it sometimes too. And not so long ago, he said to me, you know what? You actually don't really like to cook. And I was like, oh, I never really thought about it like that. But you're so true. And it was so good to kind of like, yeah, that's okay. I don't have to love cooking. What I do when I do it is okay, but I rather, set the table and things like that. So we have that piece of open communication like that and to, not be, probably we are insulted sometimes. I don't know, but now that I think about it like that, it's okay to say things that might come out of the blue because you've just, seen something. I could have said, you are completely off. I love to cook, which I don't. So it would have been like really. So it's like those small revelations and just say it and be fine with that.
Yeah. So really what you're pointing out is one, always paying attention to your partner and two, asking curious questions, or pointing out, I'm noticing you don't actually like doing that. And that gives you the freedom to be like, You're right. Oh my God.
And,
Take over.
it's taken me 50 years to realize it and 25 years of marriage, right? So it's like, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, but I love that he's watching, and
Mhm.
that you are as well. Like, hey, let's pay attention to each other still. What does quality time look like now? I mean, you kind of described it by, hey, we work together, we have meals together, versus when you both were working in corporate.
That's such a good question. The reason why I also quit corporate, and it wasn't that evident to me then, because I also think it's a little bit like, you boiled the frog, so you don't really realize it when you're right in the middle of it. But what happened was that I was under so much pressure. I came home, I was tired, I was yelling at my husband, at my kids. I was, just exhausted. And I also think you mentioned it before, Katie. I think that if I hadn't gotten out right then, I potentially would have had a burnout, because when I then got out, I was mourning, I was tired, I was extremely disappointed with the bank, not with how they treated me, absolutely not, because I was in a very good place, but how it was the whole hiring and firing mentality had just started. When I quit my job, everyone except one person said, "Oh, I wish I could do the same." So for me, it was more like, what are we spending so much time on every single day, and no one really likes what they're doing? So the whole thing about, I think we just, before landed on the sofa and were just, tired. And I probably fell asleep around 9 o'clock in the sofa, watching a Netflix movie or things like that. We did travel. We loved traveling. But often what happened then, especially before my husband's burnout, was that he then, when we came somewhere, I remember once we came to Tuscany, the very, very first time I was in Tuscany, I was pregnant with our youngest son, Charlie. And my husband kind of totally almost got like a flu, right? He completely broke down. And that happened every single time when we were kind of, relaxing, right? That he
Mm.
kind of had no energy whatsoever. So the first 2, 3, 4 days in a super bad mood, almost sick. So that obviously took a toll on our whole relationship too. And I was like, we can't travel. And the first thing that happens is that you need an additional an additional break, right? That's part of the break. You can't, this is kind of ruining everything for everyone, right? So of course there were great moments then too, but looking to before and after, we have so much more spare time now, even if we do work a lot, but it's like different quality time, right?
Yeah. And it also sounds like, and you kind of shared this in the beginning too, both of you had to focus on your mental health to
Mhm.
be good partners to each other, right? And to like really acknowledge what's happening physically to you, mentally and emotionally, do that work individually. Cause I think often when we're in a relationship with somebody for so long and like, this is just how I am, this is just how it is. But you guys both were like, actually, we need some support because there's stuff happening within us that also impacts the relationship. And it's our responsibility to work on that. So we're a better partner, better parent, better, at our work at what we do.
Yeah, 100%, 100%. And my husband was also seeing therapist at the same time. Not the same, not the same therapist, but we both got therapy to work on ourselves and our own kind of like what we dealt with. And then we spoke about it. But it was never like when you came home from the therapist, so what did you discuss today? Because that is private. But I also had my second wake-up call, which was I had a malignant tumor was detected. It was removed on time. I'm, knock on wood, safe. But that obviously also created a lot of, thoughts and fears and challenges. And what happens if I don't, if I don't survive this? Like, what do we have then, right? And that also caused a lot of fear within my husband. So I spoke them out with my therapist, and he spoke it with his therapist. And then, we met somewhere half through to talk about what had popped up during my therapy session that I needed to address with him, and the other way around too, right?
And it's good when you've got that person to bounce those thoughts and emotions off with so that
Mhm.
what you present to your partner is not concise, because that sounds like we're trying to be efficient, but a more organized, hey,
Yeah.
here's what I'm thinking and feeling, versus what often happens is we kind of word vomit or kind of volcano explosion, all the stuff. And if we both have feelings about what's going on, it's hard for us to hold the capacity of all that stuff of our partner when we have all our stuff too. So I love that you guys were like, hey, we need to go to our people, then come back and like really share, hey, how are you feeling? What do you need? And vice versa in that time. I think that's really important and a good role modeling for your kids.
Hmm.
Now, a question I always love to ask my couples is what is the thing you guys like to, in quotations, argue on repeat? What is the thing you argue about? Like it's just 25 years later, still we're arguing about this
I
particular
think
thing.
money always comes up sooner or later with my husband because he always finds new stuff to buy. Always. You're like, now we're done. And then something pops up and you're like, yeah, yeah. He actually has a point there. It's like, where do all of these ideas come from? Because I don't even, I don't even see all those things. So it's not only like bad ideas, but sometimes it's like, we don't really need that, like get real, right? So I think that is 100% one of the things. Yeah, that's probably it, actually. We argue about a lot of things, or, as we say, discuss, right? So
It sounds healthier that way.
exactly.
I think it's important we argue. You both have individual points of view, clearly, and ideas. So being able to have those difficult discussions, even if they get heated, isn't the end of the world. What is the way the two of you like to repair after a discussion that maybe didn't go so well?
In the beginning, a little bit like my dad did, my dad never kind of excused himself for anything, right? Said, oh, I was wrong. I did this or I did that. And my husband had the same behavior in the beginning, that he never admitted to having, made a mistake or saying something that was out of line or things like that. And we have both adjusted that. So we both say, hey, because sometimes you say things you don't really mean. And so I think that is a super important piece to acknowledge that it can hurt. Even, if you have an argument with the kids, or you say, I'm so sorry that I yelled at you, that I was angry at you. I didn't mean it like that, to really show your kids too and your partner that I'm sorry I said what I said.
Yeah, to take ownership and acknowledge it. Like you said, you don't even necessarily, it wasn't that you had bad intentions sometimes, but it hurt your partner.
Yeah.
Just acknowledging that. Were you guys ever the type to like read the relationship book or listen to the podcast or whatever to work on the relationship? Or did you find really just having your individual support, either through therapist or coach, was it enough to work on the relationship?
We have spoken about having a kind of like a relationship coach, but we have never actually invested in that yet. Let's put it like that. I think it's super important to do it. I have friends who do it, but I also think it's important to find someone that both you and your partner really kind of like feel that this is the right person. And we haven't, so far we haven't said, okay, now let's really do this now. I think we should probably do it. I think everyone would benefit from it, but we haven't done that yet.
When you think about the legacy you want your relationship to have, because we always think with business, we think legacy of the impact we're leaving in people's lives, but our relationship leaves a big legacy too. What is the legacy you hope your relationship in particular will leave in your kids' lives, but also friends and the people you're around?
Yeah. So what hasn't been said is that my parents actually got a divorce when I was 14 years old, and my sister was 7. And the reason back then was that my father was having an affair. As an older woman, you know that it's not only one person's fault that two people go apart, and especially not in this case, right? But it was very hard to be in that situation back then. But it was also very, in a good way, the best thing that could have happened back then, because my parents were always, always, always arguing and almost kind of like using us kids as, a shield, or to, hey, dad is doing something wrong or mom is doing something wrong. So that was extremely hard for us, or for me as a 14-year-old, to see that. I would never say, oh, you have to stay together for the kids, ever, because I think that can actually do more harm than good. But I think that also to remember then to actually be a little bit like a role model to your kids, that it is okay to argue and things like that, but it's also okay, to stay together, but not to stay together just because you should stay together.
So you're saying, the legacy you desire to leave for your kids is we have worked on this relationship and we're staying together, not because of you guys, but because
Exactly.
we desire to.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And also to say something that, and if it wouldn't last forever, that's okay too, right? It doesn't have to last forever.
Yeah, that puts a lot of pressure off of
Mhm.
the decisions your kids will make later on if they just choose to settle down with a partner a year after being together or whatever that might be, right?
I was like, what are you doing? Don't
Exactly.
marry him or her.
Can you imagine now? I always think about that with my kids. I'm like, if they marry somebody from another country and they have to move to that country, what would I say?
Exactly.
What would our
Exactly.
parents?
Yeah, we can't say much about it, can we, Katie? It's like,
No,
things
right?
happen.
Like, yes, you go forth. I led the way. I led the way.
As long as you stand, you both move together here. Yeah.
Yeah,
But we don't know what happens, right?
exactly. Exactly. Everyone has their journey. Well, to end us, I'd love to hear what is one thing you're really grateful for in your relationship right now?
I think, especially after having listened to one of my friends' stories, because the thing there is that often when we come together, like we hit midlife, and I think that that is when we kind of wake up. The kids are getting a little bit older, and we realize that, shoot. And in my case, it was like, I'm doing something I didn't really want in the first place. It hasn't been a bad career. Absolutely not. I was very successful, but I want a different trajectory now. If my husband had stayed in that same situation, which is the case for my friend and her husband, where he almost thinks that she's gone completely woo-woo and completely changed who she is. And he's so afraid of the financial, in particular, the financial impact of her decision from moving out of a big four corporate career to starting to, coach in the forest, right? So it's like, what is happening with my wife? She has done a 360. She hasn't done a 360. She's just coming back to who she originally was. But for him, it looks as if she's done a 360. And I think that is what I'm grateful for with my husband. We aren't taking the same trainings and doing the same development things, but we are both developing. So when I talk about personal development, my husband knows exactly what I mean. When I talk about, I don't know, the law of attraction, he knows exactly what I mean. So we have changed our language. We are pursuing completely different things compared to what we did 6 to 8 years ago. But it's like we are on the same journey. And I think that is so important.
I completely agree. And I commend the two of you for that because it's so easy to one of you to like shoot off like a rocket one way and the other one staying back going, I don't want to change. I like it
Yeah.
how it is. And so it's so good that you guys are on that same, you know what, we want to grow. And hopefully it's together, right? We're on this path and we're learning and we can share what we've learned along the way. And again, your kids get to benefit from that as well. Oh, thank you so much for letting me ask these probing questions about your relationship, of being so open and honest. And if people want to connect with you after this interview, Josephine, where can they find you?
Well, they can find me on LinkedIn, but I'm also on Instagram if someone prefers to be on Instagram. I know you're on both too, Katie. So it's Josephine Wanner with an F and an E at the end of Josephine, Wanner, Wanner. And just send me a connection request. Say that you heard me here on Katie's podcast, and I would love to connect.
Yeah, excellent. Well, Josephine, I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. And dear listeners, I hope you listen to this episode multiple times. Share it with your friends, those who also need to hear that power couples can stay united even 25 years into it through a lot of challenges, and that burnout doesn't have to be the end. Entrepreneurship isn't the end. Relationships can grow together stronger. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Before you go, I want to leave you with this. The effort you put into your relationship is one of the most important investments you'll ever make. How you communicate and grow together shapes your home, your leadership, and the example you set for the people around you. Relationship work is truly legacy work, and it quietly impacts more lives than we often realize. If this episode resonated, consider sharing it with someone you care about, a partner, a friend, or another couple who's building a full life and want their relationship to be the best part of it too. And if you're enjoying these conversations, make sure to follow or subscribe to Relationship Reset. Leaving a rating or review also helps this message reach more couples who are ready to grow with intention. I'll see you next week.